people from around the world are visiting Queen Elizabeth for the final time, but there's a good reason why they haven't been seeing her face. After the heartbreaking death of Queen Elizabeth II, the long-standing plan known as Operation London Bridge was put into action, commencing a thorough 10-day schedule of official procedures and events mourning the Queen. The United Kingdom is observing a traditional mourning period for the Queen during that same 10-day window, which will conclude with her state funeral at St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle. That chapel will also be her final resting place. While the funeral will be closed to the public, mourners have been able to visit Queen Elizabeth's coffin at the Palace of Westminster, where she lies in state under constant guard. It is tradition for this service to feature a closed casket. The casket will also be closed during Her Majesty's funeral. But why? For centuries, members of the royal family have been buried in coffins lined with lead, which stay closed during the funeral to prevent decay. These heavy special coffins keep out moisture, helping to preserve the body inside them and slow down the process of decomposition. The sealed coffin also allows for a royal body to be interred above the ground, as Queen Elizabeth is expected to be. According to the CBC, Queen Elizabeth's coffin was constructed over 30 years ago. The reason why the Queen chose to start thinking of her final resting place early was so that she and Prince Philip, her husband of over 70 years, could coordinate final resting places. Their coffins will be placed together in the Royal Vault, a special final resting space that was created for King George III in the early 1800s. His sons, King George IV and King William IV, are also interred in the vault. Prince Philip's coffin was placed in a temporary spot in the vault but was recently moved to share the space next to his wife, who will be interred there, following her own funeral. The Royal Vault houses many members of the royal family, dating back to the early 1800s. Some of these famous royals include the Queen's mother, Princess Margaret, and Queen Victoria's father, the Duke of Kent. Queen Elizabeth's casket isn't the only elaborate part of her funeral arrangements. There are traditional and ceremonial procedures that must occur before her body can be laid to rest. Queen Elizabeth's casket left St. Giles Cathedral in Scotland to begin its funeral procession on Tuesday, September 13th. It was taken via airplane to London, where it arrived at Buckingham Palace before being moved on Wednesday to the Palace of Westminster. Since then, her body has been laying in rest under constant guard as the British public takes this final opportunity to pay their respects before the casket is removed for her funeral on Monday, September 19th. The funeral of Queen Elizabeth is expected to be an event of national mourning, the likes of which Britain has not seen in many decades. The ceremony itself will reportedly span about an hour. Members of the royal family will be joined by dignitaries from around the world, and while exact details about the funeral were not immediately released, royal commentator Bonnie Brownlee has some speculations regarding what will unfold. Speaking to the CBC, she predicted some personal touches for the funeral, saying, "I'm expecting a grandchild will say something, maybe a poem, something that will personalize it a little bit. We could expect some surprises if they decide to switch it up a little bit, like maybe one or two things that are quite emotional in the service, but I think they'll leave a lot of that to only the family to know in advance."